I was trying to figure out how to sell you, because for context, and this relies on someone respecting my tastes in things, but I found you about a year ago, which is probably when you were getting some traction for the first time.
Starting, really.
And I just was like, whoa, this similar to how I text you, like this guy is saying things in a way that I've heard said before, but by different people that are, in their 50s and different contexts. This is kind of someone who, for whatever reason, looks like me, sounds like he's doing similar things to me, but is saying these really meaningful, impactful things. So I was pretty hooked. And on the YouTube, you know how you can save videos to folders? I keep the favorites folder pretty, sacrosanct. And in 10 years of watching, I was looking at this last night, 10 years of watching YouTube, there's 45 videos in that.
Yeah.
5 of them are from your channel.
Let's fucking go. Let's go. That's a win. I'll take that.
And then I was like, okay, I have this mid-sem break. I want to get out of here. Where can I go to maybe string a few podcasts together? Oh shit, this guy lives in Bali. He's still kind of small. Maybe he'd be up for it. Text you, and then kind of built a trip around it. But when I found your Instagram, I was like, fuck, only 2,000 followers. I'm investing early on this guy's ride. But another one of the followers was Chris fucking Williamson.
Oh, yeah.
When did that happen?
That was only a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Really? Because I was like, whoa, this guy's also investing early.
I feel like an initial public offering. I'm a penny stock.
Yeah, literally. So I guess, that just kind of, if anyone, that might not make sense to a lot of people, but that I guess is the impact and the reason why I wanted to have this chat, and I hope that is taken well.
Definitely. And also you said I look like you, which is a big compliment, so I'll take that one.
Thank you. I guess I didn't really know which way to start, because we could just do it chronologically, but I think maybe a better version is you've done so many things, from writing a 20,000 word book at 12 years old or something about child happiness.
Close enough, yeah. That happened. Yeah, no, I did actually, I did actually do that. Yeah,
to, all these impressive things, to homeschooling yourself, to bloody publishing a book about Bitcoin, to now having 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like, there's, again, a penny stock, but potential. What, is there one thing, one monument that maybe I would or would not know that you kind of stand out in yourself internally of like, yeah, that was good. That was a win.
Well, I stopped drinking when I was 18. And I think throughout my teen years, like, I definitely had some issues of just partying too much. And like, I was very much on like a downwards slope, a slippery slope. And climbing out of that, I think, is probably my proudest achievement of anything that I've done, because I get the sense that if I was not to have climbed out, if I was to have continued down that route, I definitely would have sabotaged any like potential I do have, for sure.
Okay. You've spoken about that chapter before in, I don't think you've had a full video about it maybe, but the kind of more existential ones, it's definitely been mentioned. I feel like that was a chapter you have kind of not given the ins and out details of, though I couldn't, for probably obvious reasons. So maybe that's a good place to start. What could you, to wherever you feel naturally the story begins, what led you down into that hole, and then obviously what took you out?
I think it was just, in general, 2017 was a really shit year for me. Like, lots of stuff went bad. Like, there's legal proceedings between my parents that got kind of crazy. Fell in love, like, hard for the first time. I was like 14, 15. And then got cheated on by that girl at like the same time that the legal stuff came up. And I had left school like about a year and a bit before that, and was just starting to like struggle with the social life a little bit. So I needed like some way back into a social life, because being at home, home life was fine. It's not like shit got too crazy or anything, but at that age you naturally want to get out of the house a lot more anyway. And so I think like, I just sort of started drinking around that age, and then just got sort of brought into the party sphere around like Pembrokeshire. And Pembrokeshire, there's nothing to do in Pembrokeshire.
So this is the small town of Wales you're from?
Yeah. And literally a tiny place, nothing to do. I mean, it's beautiful in the summer, but the lack of infrastructure and like options for hobbies and stuff means that yeah, the only thing people really do for fun is just get wasted. So I started getting wasted, and I did that for a couple of years, and did have a lot of fun. But it just, yeah, there's trade-offs to everything, and the trade-offs started to become potentially irreversible. So I was like, okay, I need to switch gears.
Okay. So and as I said, like most people who have found themselves at this pod will probably know the ins and outs of your stories. But real quick, the context of, you said homeschooling.
Right, yeah.
At 13 or 14? Or?
Yeah, I left
so
when I was
what do you
12.
mean?
Yeah, so basically I didn't like school. I never like fit in really well with school for whatever reason. But yeah, teachers didn't particularly like me, and you know, I had friends, but was never like popular or anything, bullied a little bit. So school just wasn't really a fun time for me. But the main thing was that I could never really understand why I was doing it. And until I can understand why I'm doing something, I find it really hard to do. Like, I'm not very good at just doing something because like I was told to do it. Like, if I don't understand the actual purpose, the telos of it, then I'm kind of mentally checked out.
The telos?
The telos. It's like the end. So like when you have like a means to an end, if you don't have the end of it, then yeah, I kind of check out. And so I could never fully understand like the end of school. Like, what was, like, we're doing work, we're moving somewhere, but where are we going? And it was generally like, oh, you need the qualifications to get a job. And the idea of like a job working for somebody else never like sat well with me, because I just knew it didn't gel well with my composition. That's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just kind of the way I'm built. Like, I did try a job a couple of years ago, and it was exactly as I expected. I did not like it at all. Freedom matters a lot to me, and so I couldn't really see, like, it felt like my decisions were being made for me, which they were, and they should be for a child that's 12 years old. But to distract myself, I got really into lots of different things. It was like, I used to like unicycle to primary school. So I would ride a unicycle in my village. It was like probably half a mile or something. But I started riding a unicycle. I would scooter there. I would just like do anything so that I could like sandwich the school day in between two things that were interesting.
Do you have clips? Because you throw in a few clips of your childhood in some of the videos. I haven't seen a unicycle one.
I found a photo of me on a unicycle when I was like 11. I can send to you after this.
What was there was, sorry to interrupt, but there was one thing you said about you would get yourself to these like autism spirals of...
I think I'm still in one.
of like dreaming about the planets not existing or something. And then you just...
Oh yeah, that was trippy. I think that was kind of when I first started like actually thinking. It was like halfway through primary school. Some context that's probably important is my dad gives like philosophy lectures about something called non-duality.
Okay.
So my dad does these like lectures on non-duality based on some experiences he had and still has.
I have so many questions about your dad, by the way. But
okay. Oh, you found him?
I didn't find him, actually I should have, but
yeah.
Even just based on you and...
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, sweet. He's got some interesting... he's an interesting guy, and yeah, he talks about this, it's not really a philosophy, but it's how it's perceived by many people, which is non-duality. And so he would say like relatively existential statements quite casually, and I'd pick up on those when I was very young, and then I'd start thinking, and I always asked a ridiculous amount of questions. I think all kids do, to be fair, like, why is the sky blue? Why is this? Why is that? But I think I was particularly annoying in that dimension, so I just keep going, and then I got to this point where I stumbled on the question of like, why does shit exist? Like, why anything? And I would like start trying to imagine the alternative when I was at school. And I would like start deleting things, and I'd go like through, okay, like the room that I'm in, say that's gone, okay, now it's just black. But then there's still the planet, I can see so I'd delete the planet, and then there's okay, delete that. And then eventually there's just like space, just like empty space. And I'd be like, but the space is still like a thing, that's still something. So delete the space. And then I would just like start fucking tweaking out in the middle of the school.
And you're in the back of a classroom and they're doing like 3+3 on the whiteboard.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that was weird. But I think that was probably like it wasn't just like a thought. It was like a very visceral experience, like in my body of just like, whoa, like I'd kind of get shivers and stuff, just like tripping out about it.
Well, I'm not an expert in this, but people have said similar things of like the neuroplasticity of a child is what you kind of hop back into on like psychedelic drugs and whatnot.
Yeah.
So maybe you kind of...
Yeah, there could be a through line there for sure. But yeah, that was fun. I probably kickstarted like my philosophical interests to some degree. I don't know if it kickstarted it or maybe it was just a result of like how I was wired anyway. But
okay, because I connect with, in so many different random little ways. I've connected with. I see a lot of not that we're the same, but I see a lot of myself. Oh yeah, but on those kind of things, in my circles have always been a pretty extreme version of it, and then like you're just orders of magnitude greater on that level. Because 12 years old, like, how does that happen to have the agency, the individual stand on yourself, to decide to quit school, to have this manifesto, to put that to your parents? For who are they to like say yes?
yeah, oh yeah, that's where I was going with the parkour thing. So I nearly died basically. I went to a parkour competition. I was doing these jumps between these two bolts of scaffolding, and instead of taking the impact through my legs, I just landed on my rib cage by my spleen. So my spleen got really fucked up, and a few days later, it still was like getting worse. So we went to the doctor and had this whole like episode. It was probably the defining pivot point of my life, because before then, like, I had my discontents with school and whatnot, but I still did it. And then that was the point, you know, there was quite a lot of doctors trying to cover their asses legally, wanting to give me a CT scan. But like, on the shitty Wi-Fi at the hospital, I was trying to figure out like what the end of that was. What was the why why did they want to give me a CT scan? And based on the type of injury they were saying they were looking for, which was a tear in the lining of my spleen, or it wouldn't have been a burst, because if it was a burst like 3 days prior, I would have been dead already. But they were worried that there was a tear in the lining. So they wanted to like do a CT scan to figure that out. But the problem with that is that even if they did figure it out, there would not be any solution. They would just, because you wouldn't operate on a teared lining, because the operation itself could cause it to burst. So all you do is put someone in intensive care and just watch them and make sure that nobody like fucking falls on them, they don't like trip over or something, because something like that could cause a slight tear to like rupture.
And how did you have because that's all good and well to know that in hindsight, but live action at 12 years old, to even be able to navigate Google 10 years ago, like, that in itself seems amazing.
I was asking the doctors as well, like, and they were like drip feeding me bits of information as I kept like asking them, yeah, but why do you want to put me in the intensive care? And I was like, okay, in case you fall over or something, all right, so there's no operation after, even if what you're looking for is confirmed, there's no actual like course of action on top of that would benefit me. And they were like, no. So I was like, okay, so why do they want to do it? There has to be a benefit somewhere. It benefits them because it covers their asses legally, but it does expose me to a big dose of radiation that isn't necessary. So I ended up going home, but because I was resistant to it, they added resistance. So what was like a bad injury turned into like a direct confrontation with mortality, because there was like, I think I had like 6 different doctors. They tried 6 different doctors to come in and convince me. I was like,
try to scare tactic
me into doing the CT scan, but I was set on not doing it because of the fact they didn't have a solution. So all the doctors came in and kept telling me like, they would put serious faces on, and I'd be like, so what would happen if like, say I go home and I fall over, or like I roll over awkwardly in bed and it bursts, like what would happen? They'd look at me seriously and go, it would be fatal. And they would like do all this like heavy stuff to try and I was like 12 years old, so I was freaking the fuck out. But I ended up going home and just waiting it out, and it got better.
Sure no one fell on you?
And someone did pretend to fucking trip me up at one point, and I nearly had I did have a panic attack actually. But yeah, so I went home, and then I had a big existential crisis, because death, before it's brought right in front of your face, is something that may or may not happen to you at some undefined point in the future. And then when you have an experience like that, it stops being an event that will happen at an undefined point in the future and starts being a state that you're in now. So that shifts, I think, the way that you think about your priorities a lot, because mortality isn't something in the future. It's actually, the state of mortality is something occurring right now. So it was like real, and it like clicked. And then when that clicked, school, I couldn't see the end of, it just lost all its pull. And I think I felt like a surge of autonomy after that. Like, it was kind of like people often talk about this sentiment in like self-improvement space, especially in the red pill space. There's this sentiment of like, no one's coming to save you. And that's like the sentence, that's like the phrase that emerges when people have like a very embodied realization that is very common as everybody grows up. But I think that kind of happened to me really young, where I was like, fuck, like there's nobody like dictating the rules. There's no adults really. There's just like kids who grew up and no one knows what they're doing. And like, you got to decide where you're going to go. And school was just like the immediate thing that just seemed like pointless to me. So yeah, I convinced my dad. I was speaking to him. He was the most supportive. My mum took more convincing. She was more like conservative, not politically conservative, but conservative in the sense of trying to conserve the peace. But yeah, she ended up taking me to a child psychologist to like double check that I wasn't insane and I actually knew what decision I was making. And the psychologist was like, yeah, you can't put this kid back in school. And she was like, all right, fair enough then. And then, yeah, I left a few months after that.
It blows my mind because my version of schooling was just such a prim and proper kind of the same place all the way through and whatnot. So I just can't imagine that, but it makes a lot of sense when you frame it in that way. And I think most people, maybe not most people, a lot of people might have less extreme, like finite, definite versions of that almost awakening to the realities of, one's coming to save you. But that's kind of the lesson to learn in your young 20s, maybe. You go out and you travel and you see the world and you're like, oh shit, I kind of need to live my life and build it how I want to, rather than a decade before. And even when it comes at 23, let's say, there's the motivation of liberation and I can do anything, and the fear of, oh my God, like it is going to end. And if there are no adults, who's in charge? Oh, no one. Oh, that is so scary. At 12, though, when your whole society, whether it's the doctors coming to you or your school or anyone, sees you as a bloody 12-year-old for good reason, even though you maybe are mentally more in a kind of 10 years ahead of your time capacity in some respects, at least in that one. What was the scale of balance of the liberation motivation versus the fear of, holy shit, there are no rules?
Yeah, at first it was just pure liberation. Like, fuck all this shit, I'm doing my own thing. Like, fuck the rules, all that. And then I left school and like, first couple of months I was like buying loads of fucking textbooks. I was like collecting all this information. I was like, buying all that.
You're the smartest person ever.
Yeah, I was going to be a genius, dude. And then I was like so hyped about it. And then after like, about 2 months, I think. Like, because the original intention was to do the course material from school, but just to blast through it as fast as I could at home, rather than going at like the pace of the class, which tends to slow down to the slowest person because you can't leave anybody behind. So it ends up, you can't learn at your own pace, basically. And the idea was to just try and blast through it. And then I just started getting a bunch of panic attacks every time I was looking at the textbooks. Because I think during that period of time, I was definitely psychologically a little bit like unstable as a result of the whole nearly dying experience, and some equivocation was made in my mind between wasting time and dying. So every time I did an action that felt like wasting time, like
i.e. coursework
that I didn't like, fucking linear algebra and shit like this, it just felt, if I didn't see why I was doing it, it would feel kind of like I was dying. And that's gone to like that feeling from all the way back then still crops up every now and then, like in particular things, but it's mostly gone. But in that period of time, it was really strong. And then, the real existential crisis came when I decided to ditch the entire curriculum and just fucking Jesus take the wheel and just hope that my life doesn't end up atrociously bad.
Wow. When was that? Is that bringing us now into the moment? 13, 14.
Yeah, 13. It was only a few months after like I started doing the course material at home that we ended up ditching it.
How involved, and I don't say this whole thing because I want to understand your parents' role.
Where were your parents?
It's like, but how involved were they? Because again, I can imagine ones that are not involved because they're busy doing heroin and stuff. But if they're, quote unquote good parents.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Really good. And, they've been really supportive. They weren't like homeschooling me, like teaching me themselves. But they're always like supportive when I was like making decisions, like helping me think through the decisions and see the pros and cons of things. And there was a level of oversight as well, to ensure that I was like doing something. And oftentimes I'd be like, when I did start learning on my own path, I'd look into things that I found interesting, which they often didn't really understand what I was learning and stuff, but they trusted that I was learning something.
So I just had a flashback to, I don't know if you know, but you have 3 Twitter accounts, and 2 of them are like long gone, and some of them are like little kind of 12-y Angelo talking COD and.
I need to delete those. I need to find the password for them and get.
And I'm just now imagining you at 13 convincing your parents that I'm learning internet stuff. Meanwhile, you're tweeting about
tweeting my favorite COD streamer. If you find on one of those,
Ali G shared and all. Yeah, was it Ali G? No, Ali A.
Ali A. Yeah, I used to watch him a lot when I was like 13. If you find on one of those Twitter accounts, there's like a screenshot of like the Google Maps satellite view of the school that I went to with like an escape route plotted. Like I drew, you can draw on with like on your phone. We used to like run away from school at lunchtime and stuff and go into the town and like hide from the teachers. And I like plotted the escape route thinking I was like fucking Michael Scofield from Prison Break, just like fully laughing.
I think I would have seen that because that vaguely rings a bell, but I don't think I realized what it was.
I'll find it after this. I'm saying you could put it up on this.
I can put it up on this slide. Yeah, okay. Wow. So this is a question I wanted to ask, and maybe I'll keep on asking it. But as I was thinking about you and your life, and at least how I knew it, it seems like, I mean, we're all these days living kind of these dual lives of, yes, we're humans in the real world, biological apes and divine monkeys, but we're also very much veering into this internet world. And you're obviously going heavy, but it makes a lot of sense that you're going heavy into that because where you started, like your education itself was maybe one of the first educations out there that was internet heavy and internet based. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So I'm sure you discussed and talked about things or even just picked up on how the rest of the whole world has been educated. Do you notice patterns or things that you got that they didn't or vice versa? Yeah,
there's this is something Taleb said. I was reading his book recently. And in one part of it, he talks about how, he's like a galaxy brain fucking intellectual.
Who is this dude?
Taleb. He's a guy that made a lot of money doing options trading, but he's written some books that are like kind of like massive totalizing theories for understanding risk and uncertainty. And they're fascinating because he draws from so many different places and traditions like literature and philosophy and science and trading and economics and like kind of brings them all together. I think he's able to do that because really he's analyzing people, not systems, how people relate to systems. So that can apply to all things. But anyway, he's got this book called Anti-Fragile, and in it he was talking about how when he was younger he did a degree and everything, but he would also just like spend all of his free time learning and stuff in his own time. And he said like anything that he learned at school for the sake of like passing a test or whatnot, he's forgotten, and everything that he's learned from his own intrinsic motivation, he's remembered. And to some degree, I think that applies to me. Like lots of my friends who I grew up with, did go through school, and I feel like when I speak to them about stuff that they learned in school, I feel like they haven't really retained anything. And this was one of the things that was a part of like the document I wrote to my family, convincing them that I should leave school early on, was that like whenever you study for a test, like something happens in your brain where the information's only relevant with a view to that test. Once a test's done, the information gets like tagged as irrelevant and it kind of just gets deleted. And I think that happens not with everything. You do a master's, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to keep a lot of it, especially if you just go directly into a career. But especially when you're less certain about which career path you want to take, when you come out of that learning experience, I feel like especially if there's a break period between learning the information and applying it, the information will go and will disappear and you'll have to relearn it, which is like spending twice the amount of time on like a similar thing. There's a quote from your actual Twitter that this reminds me of, if you don't mind me reading it. It's the goal
Yeah, the goal is to align with what genuinely matters to you. And I think we could say in this context, like to learn what genuinely matters to you, so that effort starts to feel less like top-down force, i.e. you need to learn this test, and more like bottom-up self-expression.
Yeah.
Self-expression part is just like self kind of education.
Yeah.
Makes a hell of a lot of sense to me though as well. Yeah.
Because yourself, like what the self is hard to explain. We have like a first-person perspective, but we don't really have any good like third-person perspectives of what a person is, like specific, like their psyche, like what is your psyche. And in many ways it's kind of the core of it seems to just be like values and preferences. That's kind of what makes up a person, and you know, your personality and everything else is sort of downstream from that. So to express your values and preferences through the effort that you're doing is something that happens when what you're doing is voluntary and chosen by yourself and autonomous. But if it's like top down, so that there's some defined parameter to which you're then molding yourself to fit, then you have to kind of enact top-down force where your brain is like forcing your body to do stuff that you don't naturally want to do, and effort starts to feel like restrictive. But when you're really aligned, it just feels like you're kind of expressing like the essence of yourself.
So in your most judgy moments, because it's certainly where my brain goes, and I am judgy, but I don't know if you are. You seem a bit more softy. But
my whole YouTube channel is kind of just judging people.
Yeah. Is that why people, whether it's a typical high school student, but if they run that trajectory and they just do the uni and get the 9 to 5, just so often, not just surface level, but even if you have conversations, so often feel like just bots or sheepish? Is that what's going on there? Because they're clearly not. And if you give grace in your perspective and you really draw it out, everyone's such a unique individual. But so often it feels like you need to kind of tap away all this top-down force to let that.
Yeah. I think like, I mean, I don't speak to many people, to be fair, but when I do speak to people,
just in the comment section.
Yeah, just the internet. When I do speak to people who have gone that route, like often it's just surface level conversations so you don't know, but of the few people that I do know quite well, who are doing something like purely because their parents want them to do it, it doesn't feel like bots, or like they're kind of in this like this picture you have in your head of just like droning on into like autopilot. It just feels more like they're kind of whipped. Like there's a fear there fundamentally, and they're like a full person, but they're very afraid of like a particular thing, which is often like the disappointment of their parents or something. And so then they start acting in ways that are like not expressions of themselves. They're just like reactive responses to a perceived threat.
Do you notice that? Because I notice that a lot in a place like here in Bali, in wait staff, for example. I feel, from my brief knowledge of a society like this one, where for quite logistical, bare bones reasons, you kind of have to stick to a certain path. You can't just become an influencer, necessarily as a local Balinese villager. So you might have to top down, get in the farm and get a job or whatever. And there's just so much, I don't know if it's the word timidity in the movements, in the way kind of one operates through the world.
100%, yeah. Yeah, and I think like there's also a difference in values. Like the Balinese culture is far more collectivist than the West. Like the West is very, very individualist, and so we have a different set of cultural values which do get adopted as personal values. That kind of, when they go deep enough, they're indistinguishable from like self-generated personal values, because they run so core to somebody's being. They're so built into them. Like the culture very much exists within you. It's not something you're in. It's like it interpenetrates with you.
So you're like, I guess that's why missionaries and things can exist. Okay, while we're here, because I mean, I was probably going to tie it into the end, but since we're here naturally, you had a Q&A, I think, a few months ago, and I did a comment.
Oh, yeah.
It was like individuality versus community.
Oh, that was you.
That was me.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
must have
yeah.
happened.
You actually liked that one.
Yeah. I was actually considered doing a video on it after I read that because
He didn't like it. Like he didn't like all the comments. He liked. Like, I got a reply from some other dude. I was like,
Yeah.
sure. But it's actually been especially in a society like this, and witnessing that. I was speaking to a mate of mine who's a leadership coach, leadership life coach, and such an individual to therefore coach other individuals, and in your own way that's almost what you're doing in a sense, living this quite individualistic life so that you can then overspill that into these lessons and insights, which would be selfish to not share, in your own words. Where does that sit of the value for a human, individual versus community? Because what did I also see? Inconvenience is the price of community, and things like that.
Yeah.
They're really in tension with each other, and I can certainly see the value in both. And as I feel naturally maybe more individualistic, I yearn for the community stuff. I'm sure people who maybe feel more in their actions community yearn for the individual stuff.
Yeah.
Is it just grass is greener? What's going on?
Yeah.
What video would you have made?
I don't know yet. The reason I wanted to make a video is to help myself think through it, because it's something that has only really occurred to me recently. Like, I had no idea how individualistic I was until I realized that that's not everyone, which was kind of recently because I grew up in the West, right? And I'd been to Bali when I was 16 once, but other than that, I basically have only ever been in Western cultures. And I was reading Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, where he was talking about like the immense differences in cultural values between, especially on that scale of individualist versus collectivist, and how like lots of collectivist things can seem wrong, like morally wrong to somebody from an individualistic culture. And he gave the story of how he went to India and lived with them, and it seemed like the family, it seemed like people in the family were getting mistreated. Like the wife was just always in the kitchen cooking and didn't like sit down to eat with them at the table, and he was like getting enraged at staying with this family in India because he just couldn't understand. And after a few months of like integrating with their culture, it all made sense to him, because the difference was that the unit wasn't seen as the person, the unit was the family. And so that shifts the moral dynamics of the situation. And thinking about that for a while made me go, oh fuck, like I am deeply a product of my culture. Like there's no other, probably few other reasons to why I'm so individualistic than the types of messages I was exposed to growing up. But in terms of like which is better, there's a quote, I think it's Thomas Sowell, I'm not sure. It said there are no solutions, only trade-offs. I think that's probably one of those things where they're really, it's not like
Chris Williamson's been slamming that one.
Pardon?
I've heard Chris Williamson slam that
Is it?
one.
Yeah, he likes that one. So yeah, I think there's no, on individualist versus collectivist, fuck knows. I feel like collectivist earns you more meaning and individualist earns you more freedom, and it's kind of a trade-off between those two.
And if you happen to tie in freedom to meaning, then it's a weird one. Do you see yourself, because I definitely see the kind of people, and I build stories around them all, of course, like we do, and again, judgy here and there, but the kind of person who moves to Bali, a Westerner moves to Bali, seems like one of the more fiercer individuals of them. I really wanted to discuss this with you because it's something that has gone in my head. I personally, just to inject myself in your own story, but lived overseas in a somewhat parallel, very different culture, but Guatemala, developing country, and you can get so much more individual freedom and lifestyle and all the above for doing such a move. But you turn your back in at least a geographical way to friends, family, your home culture, your home country. And that now I'm kind of flipped back on as well. I'm not ready to give up my ability to kind of be an individual and come up to Bali for a week or two here and there and go on little expeditions. But I feel myself really willing to trade a lot for feeling part of the community. And for me, that wasn't my hometown of Melbourne. Like, so it might not be your hometown of this little town of Wales, but at least within the borders of Australia, like anywhere, it could be 3 hours away, but that felt like the right balance for me for now. I wonder if you have, since you're kind of at the start of the maybe more individual geographical path of just having moved a few months ago, do you see in your future any pulls to maybe either fully embed yourself in a community here or back somewhere else? I know UK is having all of its own issues, and do you feel an escapist guilt at all? Like, what?
No,
No.
I don't feel an escapist guilt. I think generally, people choose the conditions that are best suited for them, and if people choose the conditions that are best suited to them, but the word "them" can be quite it can expand and contract depending on how individualistic the person is. So if your family unit is you, then you'll choose the best conditions for your family unit and so forth. And I'm so individualistic by nature, and like culturally as well, but I'm just naturally, what I am is that I don't feel like a big drive to integrate into any community or anything, even though I can see the value of it, like intellectually, and I know that like there's definitely trade-offs by being so individualistic, but that's also just sort of, it's not like I've chosen to be individualistic. It's what I've discovered about myself. It's just what happens to be the case. And so like to try to counteract that would be an option if I was noticing that there was like trade-offs, like say my family started to suffer as a result of me running away, then
the image of like a dying parent, an ailing parent, that often brings people back.
If a parent was ill, I'd leave Bali instantly to take care of them. But while that's not happening, and there is the freedom, there is the optionality, I'm exercising that.
I think you did do that, didn't you?
Last year, my mom had a wrist surgery.
That's right, yeah.
So she wasn't able to use her wrist for a couple of weeks. I flew back to the UK and then ended up there for like 6 months. I got trapped.
Oh dear.
Shouldn't have done it.
I guess like, I'm glad I could ask you this question, because I did want to say that I was like, oh, I hope he does make this video, because it's definitely something that I've been playing with. And even from my point of view, embedding or trying to embed in, Sydney society, which would be similar to, all the other cities in this globalized world. Even my trajectory so far of living overseas for a few years and blah, 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 means there's a smaller subset of people that I can really connect with on all these maybe more individualistic levels and the freedom levels, and not be kind of whipped, because why are you letting yourself be whipped? I can't even imagine that feels like a big divide, gap to bridge for me. And then if I haven't been in school for, there's so much less shared experience to connect with. Yeah. What kind of people do you connect with? Like, have you noticed trends in the kind of people you connect with?
It's like a weird blend of like autistic people, retards, people who are a little bit where something's wrong with them. Notice like my friends from back Wales, they're all a little bit probably because of the groups that I got involved with when I was a teenager, but they're all a little bit fucking wild. And just my best friend of all time from Wales is definitely like a sight to behold. Like if you speak to him for a while, he's like, there's nobody who's like him. It's hard to explain.
It's so funny to see you in this context as well, because, and especially the last few weeks, I've been trying to watch, a lot of stuff, and you're so refined, and so, because these videos are, highly edited and put together. And then that's good. Yeah. Okay, so I think now we're caught up to what you said initially of this dark period. Yeah. And again, I don't know if it's kind of peeling away the scab wound, and it might be a bit painful or whatever, but as someone who, and we've had a few guests, have a bit of, mental, whatever context, holes in their life. Is it possible for you to kind of paint the picture of the internal framework of your mind in that state? Like, what is going on to an individual, or to you as an individual, driving you in can you recognize that version of you?
In the dark spot?
Yeah, in the dark spot.
Yeah.
So I still need to get better at my questioning.
No, it makes sense. I think like the the main like characterization of it was like a sort of like disagreement with reality, like an adversarial relationship with the external world. Like life itself, I had an adversarial relationship with life itself. Like life was hostile. It felt like it was sort of designed to piss me off, and to make me do shit I didn't want to do all the time and then die. It was like this the the parts of life I consider to be relevant information were like all the worst bits. The fact that you have to work, the fact that it's going to suck, that you're going to get really ill, that your friends are going to die, that you're going to die. Like, this is like the 5 things that I would just like fixate on, and they became like my definition of what life is. And so therefore I felt like it was actually a bad thing that I was born. And so, you know, I think people, when they get to that state, like years ago, it would have been classified as like hating God. Like God kind of represents that, like that human projection of like an agent into the external world. Like, and the sense that like the universe is like was like an agent of my destruction, an agent of my suffering, was like right at the core of my being. And so everything that I did was sort of a rebellion against life. At the most extreme, you see this with school shooters. Like the writings of school shooters is all focused around like getting sort of retribution against reality by like destroying as much of it as they can in a short period of time.
This is the thing you hold dearest, the world, your kids.
Yeah. Exactly. So it was like a far more subtle version of that culminated in this like slow suicide. It wasn't like I was ready to jump off a bridge by any means, but there was like a slow suicide where it was like, I'm not gonna actively kill myself, but I am going to do everything that leads to my destruction. So I am gonna completely abandon all of my work. I am gonna abandon everything that I've been learning. I am gonna go and do a lot of drugs with some people who are dodgy. I am gonna get into fights. I am gonna like be an agent of my own destruction as like a rebellion against the universe that was set up and asked me to participate, had the audacity to ask me to participate in it when I didn't choose to be here. I didn't choose to be alive, and now I've got to fucking get a job. I've got to do... And it was like this really just smelly view of reality. That, yeah, culminated in a kind of what I'd convinced myself at the time was a rebellion against it, but was actually a submission to it. Because it was like, I convinced myself I was like rebelling against the dangerous reality, but really I was just submitting to my whims. Like, what do I want to do? I want to go get fucked up at a party. I'll do it then. What do I want? I don't want to put in effort. I don't want to work. Okay, I won't then. That's not a rebellion. It's submission. It's like defeat. But I was convinced myself at the time that like, because reality was the evil thing, not me. It was reality that was the bad thing. I was rebelling against the reality, but I was just rebelling against myself. I was like destroying myself.
Wow, you can really frame that in Christian terms of like God, and then I'm just like going to the devil's side, hey?
Mm-hmm.
But was there a sense of like there's so much power? I've in my worst moments, it's definitely it's funny. I think the worst actions. Fuck, you might have said it actually, or you might have made a video. I think it was the worst paths paved with good intentions. Like you always think that you're in the right, or you've at least been wrong. It's like the most dangerous people are the victims.
Yeah.
Man, that's fucking heavy. Do you get the sense that those dodgy characters, for instance, that you're involved with were in the exact same position, but had got themselves there different ways? What did you see in the other people who were involved in that?
I expected to really hate them. Because, you know, they're very adversarial and hostile in many cases. And like there was definitely elements of their behavior and their character that I disliked, but
before when you weren't in it, you would see them maybe around town and be like, oh, those are
dodgy
but
guys.
Then once you were,
and I thought they'd be like, you know, your picture of the moral landscape when you're a kid is like a cartoon. It's like very low resolution, and you're not mature, so you don't understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. But yeah, they were just fucking carrying way more than me. That was all it was. They had so much harder shit to deal with than I did. And, you know, the sort of the grace with which I carried the shit that I was carrying, like the ratio of, this is so autistic, the ratio of grace to shit. If you would just like increase the shit.
Oh yes, the old shit to grace ratio.
Yeah, the shit to grace, everyone knows that one. But if you just increased, my ratio just increased the shit, then my grace would have fell in the same way, probably more than them. Like, so I remember admiring them in some way, just because, yeah, there was a strength to them that I felt I didn't have. But there's also a bunch of fucked up stuff that they would do, so it was kind of counterbalanced by that. But yeah, there's nothing like sort of inhuman or evil about them that you'd expect to find. I just remember being shocked at, like, when I would go to their houses and see their family lives, just how different it is to grow up in that environment. Like, I was so lucky to have the environment that I grew up in.
Do you mind painting a picture of an image that might come to mind, or
just like
example?
Just council houses where like there's only one parent and they're like struggling with a million health conditions, but just like actively deciding to not get them checked. You know, constant tension in the room. Like when you go in and you hear them speaking to their mum, and it's just like there's so much like subtext, like really heavy subtext of like shit that went wrong between them that's just like in the air, just always. And then fights break out and it got physical at times, and you'd just be sat there on the couch kind of like, what the fuck do I do now? Like this is a lot. But you could see it was like in the air. It would like seep into all the cracks of their day and their mind as well, and just sort of fester. And
not much room for linear algebra.
No. So yeah, when people say like, just try harder at school, the people who grow up in those environments, they just haven't seen those environments, I think. Yeah.
So what, this proudest achievement of yours, kind of coming out of that, what's the process? What is that journey? Because you've made videos about this. I was watching last night, the last video I watched was the pain paradox, I think you called it.
Oh yeah.
Really, really good one. That was one of the favorites.
Yeah.
That's probably maybe the favorite. Really good thought experiment that everyone should watch. And kind of goes on that shit to grace ratio. Maybe that's the subtitle.
We're gonna make that a thing.
But yeah, the nature of your videos, they are kind of formalized and well thought out and structured. But when you just think back to it in kind of your own casual words, what was the path?
I think it began. It had to begin with, sounds trite and cliche, but it had to begin with humility, because the path that I was going on depended on my arrogance, because there was an arrogance in that.
Entitled to a good life.
That's a big one, yeah, that was a really big one. And also in that, like, I've got it all under control. I could switch on a dime if I wanted to.
Okay.
And that belief that, like, you know, is how you justify ending up just going down and down and down without doing anything about it, because you're sort of feeding on the belief that, like, it's like an addict when they say, oh, if I wanted to, I could quit.
Yeah, right.
It's the same sort of arrogance, where it's like, actually, no. Like, you don't know. You don't know that if you could... Yeah, you don't know that you could quit if you wanted to. And you'll convince yourself that you do know, that you understand yourself, that you understand what motivates you and what's driving you, but you don't. And so long as you convince yourself that you've got yourself figured out, then it leaves no room for you to learn anything about yourself. And some of the things that you're going to learn about yourself are going to be hard to learn. They're going to be like painful, and they're going to be bad things about you, like genuinely bad things. And there was genuinely bad things about me back then, like one of which was the realization that it wasn't the fucking universe that was a bitch, it was me. Like, that's not an easy thing to take on when you kind of painted this picture of yourself as like the heroic rebel, and it's just got thrown into this life thing that's horrible.
Yeah, because earlier when you said that, I didn't even think about it because it's years later. But when you first come to the realization that I've been fighting this fight, you can think of it in a political sense. If you were a revolutionary fighting the government, and then you realize you've become the bad guy in the process.
Yeah, that's heavy. Yeah, and especially when you realize how that's affecting the people that you actually care about, who are actually trying. Like,
I wonder if the Che Guevaras of the world ever got that.
Like my mum, for instance, she was in the middle of COVID. Like she's always been probably the hardest working person that I know. She runs like a local shop, and she's there like 12 hours a day, like most days of the week, weekends as well. Like she doesn't really give herself time to rest, which is concerning, but also admirable in its own way. And she, during COVID, was like dealing with COVID as a brick and mortar shop that had to close down, and it was not easy at all. Meanwhile, she had this fucking 18-year-old son at the house, just like stealing her alcohol and drinking it and staying up all night playing games and doing nothing to help around the house. So she had to carry the weight of the business and the house. And she would confront me with it, and I would be incapable of taking the confrontation. I would just leave because the confrontation called me to confront the truth, which is what I wasn't at the time strong enough to do. Meanwhile, I was trying to hold on to this view of myself that was completely outdated, of like, the young kid who's leaving school and challenging the world. It was completely outdated because that was gone at that point. Like I was not anything to be admired. Like, and I was actively making my mum's life harder and my brother's, because he had to be that kid's brother.
The experiment gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like that. And that was my biggest fear as well. So sort of when it is your biggest fear, it's harder to acknowledge the evidence that it's coming true because you're so afraid of it. Like that's one of the downsides of the path that I chose, is it did leave a big fear in my head of being a failed experiment, so to speak. Like I felt so much pressure to make sure that I was right to do what I did and to take a different path, that the fear of it all falling apart and having like family members like come back and say, look, we tried to fucking tell you like that you don't know what you're talking about and you should just like knuckle down and do what everyone else does. That was a massive fear of mine. And I think that fear probably fueled lots of like the escapism with parties and stuff. But it also made it a lot harder to confront the evidence that it was becoming true. So there had to be a moment of humility at the very beginning where I went like, right, my picture of myself and reality is there's clearly a mismatch here. That in itself took like a moment of humility. And then acknowledging just how big that mismatch was another struggle that was kind of more inch by inch. And yeah, it just became this slow process of realizing that I really did not understand much about myself or my motivations or what was like actually driving me. And from that acknowledgement, room was opened up. Like as my false notions were taken away, there was an empty space that could get filled by more accurate ideas. And then that started to happen and created this like sort of reverse spiral. So instead of spiraling downwards, it like stopped on that moment of humility and started slowly coming back up, and it sort of just continued going back up.
Okay, I'm very looking forward to, tracking that spiral path. But before we do, if you don't mind, now's probably the time to ask about your dad a bit, because as the father figure, there's probably more impetus, especially in that stage of a guy's life, I feel, in the guidance. I presume you know, but because you said telos, and that's the most ancient Greek word I've ever heard. But your older brother's called Theo, God, and then you're called Angelo, fucking angel messenger. Like, even that, like, that's got to be purposeful. Like, what's going on?
Our middle names are purposeful. Theo's is...
Like God and angel, like...
Yeah, I mean, my mum... The reason I'm called Angelo is just because my mum is obsessed with Italy, and she loves Italian, the Latin languages. But my dad gave me my middle name, which was Romano, which is like I don't even know, I can't remember, but I think it's something to do with Vedanta. I can't remember, but yeah, it has some meaning derived from an ancient spiritual tradition that he was interested in when he was younger. But yeah, about my dad, he was a normal kid up until the time when he was 16. And then he had these like experiences where his sense of separate self dissolved. The non-dual experiences, they've been written about since like some of the earliest writings of history.
So is that like a hero's dose of psychedelics, or is he just having that?
I guess
pop
so.
in
He
there?
was dead, so he's never done
Yeah.
into psychedelics or
So
anything.
this just happened to him.
I've tried to convince him to do psychedelics.
Uh-huh.
I think it would be a really interesting experiment. I'll get it done one day,
Yeah.
but he's got no interest in it.
So this just happened to him. It's like the old things of an angel came down, and you know.
Yeah. But like, he didn't interpret it in religious terms at all.
Wow.
But yeah, so that happened, and then he was like going to be a footballer at like Swansea City and stuff, and he just bunned it all off and went and lived in a monastery for the next like 4 years, trying to learn about what the fuck he was experiencing, like what he was seeing.
So it was multiple times. It wasn't a one-off.
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine just like an entity just fucking ayahuasca, like an IV, like
Yeah, you get spiked.
cop this in a Tesco. Like.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that how he kind of describes it, or is that how you frame it in your mind, or am I just being a...
So he described. I had the same experience when I was 17, and it doesn't disappear. It stays as like a frame switch. The best way I can describe it is like if you've seen a magic trick before that's like completely stumped you, and like you're fully like intellectually like the card didn't just appear in my hand, but your body doesn't get it. Your body's like, no, the card just fucking teleported from that place to the other place. And then you see how it's done, and then the magic is completely gone. And there's no magic in it anymore. As soon as you actually see it be done, like from behind the magician, then it's gone. You can see it from the front, you can see it from any angle you want, and there's no magic in it. It's kind of like that, where the magic trick dissolves, and then from that point forwards, like...
What's the magic trick?
Like the sense of being a separate self.
Oh.
Like,
yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. So this sounds exactly like copping an ego death, but if it just happens spontaneously, maybe it comes with the relevant after work and stuff to actually integrate it. You kind of get that as a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, I never saw it as like work or anything like that.
No, what I mean is like if I go and fucking fire 6 grams of mushrooms or something, then that might get me to that experience, but it probably doesn't ingrain itself so well unless I do associated works alongside it.
Right.
If you get this kind of thing, it maybe comes with like the whole package. Like it's there and it's ingrained.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
It's just my attempts to...
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because when you're on psychedelics, there's like... It's kind of not you, like, because there's such a vast state change that when you return to the state, you're kind of just returning with memories, and so the you that had the ego death on the psychedelics, or like the sense of self dissolved there, when the state returns back to previous, there's
detached.
Yeah, it's kind of dreamlike in a way.
Yes. So you can imagine how it would have been, and you have to use a few things of abstraction and imagination.
Yeah.
Is this where it was?
Yeah, it just became immediately evident. Like there was no like thinking or anything. It was just the case. It just became the case, and then like the magic trick, after it becomes the case that it's a trick, it's not the thing. After that, like even if you sort of lose, even if with the magic trick example, even if you forget how a magic trick is done, if you've seen how it's done at one point, if you understood at one point how it's done, it'll never have its magic again. And it's kind of like that. And that happened to my dad when he was 16, and he like fell in love with the whole thing, because I think he had the experience in a more like emotional and like romantic way. Like he kind of fell in love with the freedom of it, and stayed it. Obviously he went to live in a monastery for 4 years. He sort of stayed with it. I never felt any, because nothing actually changes. There's a quote, I think, from Non-Dualists that says like nothing changed but everything was different, and that's what it's like that nothing does actually change, because it's not like oh, the magic trick was real and now it's not. Like the realization is the magic trick was never real. So nothing has changed. Everything's different. You're experiencing it differently, but nothing has changed because the realization wasn't, oh, it was this way, now it's this way. It was this way all along. And so there's no thing to be gained from it that's not already the case. And that alone made me uninterested in pursuing it because there's really nothing to pursue.
This feels already the way you say it, like the non-duality stuff, and then is this kind of where the YouTube channel might find its limit? Like this is stuff that's happened, but for a wider audience, it's kind of hard to package.
Yeah, there's also not really any, like, other than just enjoyable conversations and stuff. There's no need to talk about it because it's already the case. Like, I'm not going to give anybody anything new by talking about that stuff. It'll just confuse people, and people's identities as well are heavily based on their metaphysics, their understanding of reality, the picture into which they fit. And so when you talk about non-duality, people get very resistant because
is it fair for me to say the kind of universal oneness? Is that kind of what you're hinting
sort of
at?
Yeah. But the problem with one is it still creates a separation. So like to say one is to exclude not one.
Okay.
That's where the non-dual
Infinite?
will come from. Yeah, in a way. None of the words actually ever really get there. They kind of just fucking dance around it.
The nature of words.
Yeah, they draw edges around things, and that is the opposite of non-duality, which is the lack of edges. That's why it says not two, because when you draw an edge, then you have two. If you draw a circle, you have inside the circle and outside the circle.
It's like a piece of paper that magically blends.
Yeah, it's tricky. Anything you can think of, like intellectually, isn't it? Because that is the instrument of the intellect, is separation. It draws circles around things and separates content from context so that it can make categories and use those categories to communicate. It's like a social function.
Yeah.
So everything that you ever do, it's like trying to get there with your thoughts or with your words. Is like trying to use a net to lift a bunch of water, and then just thinking the water can't be lifted. Clearly, every time I bring up the net, there's nothing in it. But it's the starting point. The method creates its own confusion, which fucking sends people crazy and leaves them in this like fucked up cycle where they're like seeking spiritual enlightenment their whole lives because they think there's something to like get from it. And they're the whole time they're like reading books and words and like using they're using the net, and they just never end up getting there because the act of trying makes it go further away.
So I have a friend who we will get on the pod one day. He's in New Zealand at the moment. Crazy dude, in the best of ways. I met him, he's ridden his push bike around Australia for like 7-10 years straight, just living in the bush, like in a tent and stuff. I'm going to clip this part, I already know, and like show him because he's always like, nah, don't read books, like none of it. It's just like, you need to know, like, far out, he'd love it. And I imagine, it must be interesting looking at all the kind of Ubud types and wondering what's going on.
Yeah, I think lots of that stuff is spiritual bypassing. It's like this concept where people use, they like co-opt the brand identity of spirituality in order to justify ends that, or the pursuit of motivations that are entirely separate from that.
Just drugs and sex.
Drugs and sex, basically, yeah. And they're like, I'm fucking finding my true self.
Yeah, you could have done that in the fucking shithole in Council Flat.
Yeah, no, you could have gone to fucking Wales, man. Have a good sesh.
Okay, so if your dad like has had this stuff, was he? And I don't know. Tell me if this is sensitive topics, but was he around in the teenage years? Was he there as a guiding force?
Fully, yeah. He was like the main guiding force in my development during my
And what was he saying or doing or acting? And maybe with hindsight, knowledge of yourself better now, knowledge of him. If you were your own parent, if you have kids and your son's in a similar thing, how would you do it the same or different?
I think one thing he did, which from my view was almost an experiment as well, that like he was always very committed to his own judgment and his own intuition. He always fully trusted his own judgment and his own intuition about what was best for me, what was best for my brother, what was best for the family and stuff. And it generally proved correct. And the the main thing,
Almost maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
yeah, in a sense, because the thing that separates the conclusions he came to as a result of his intuition and stuff versus what many parents come to is his was far less interventionist. So he would rarely come to the conclusion that he needed to intervene. It was in a few specific cases where he would actually intervene and just be like, no. Like most cases, he had a very hands-off approach and let me make mistakes myself, which allowed me to learn things. And lots of parents deprive their kids of that opportunity by trying to protect them. So they'll have this interventionist mindset, this sort of sense of like, if it isn't broke, fix it. Like they just need to be the fixer, and they need to like intervene. They need to like, it's like a kind of fear response where they're grasping and trying to control and like course correct in micro ways. And it's more comfortable as a parent to do that because it makes you look better to the social world. Like my dad would often get in trouble with other parents because they would look at how he was raising. They would let me jump between roofs of buildings and stuff doing parkour, and they would look at him like he was crazy and like being irresponsible as a parent. They would morally condemn him and stuff, and he would just stay completely committed to.
But even internally, I mean, you could die, and then he's going to be not who gives a fuck about what other people think. Your kid died.
Yeah, he
could have stopped it.
Yeah, he definitely had to. Was very
tackle with himself. Like
he was very courageous as a parent. In that, the extent to which he was willing to let me fuck up was like very courageous. Lots of parents aren't willing to let their kids fuck up, and as a result, the kids never like.
My mum always says, I like, you know, kind of jokingly because I've pushed against it to such a degree, but like, you know, I invested too much in you if you're gonna go kill yourself, you know?
Yeah, they see their kids as an investment a lot of the time, which is funny. But I never got that sense with my dad. I never, like, it was clear he was investing time and energy in me, but I never got the sense that it was for the sake of his identity or how I made him look. Like, it wasn't like I was an investment in his own self-image. I think lots of kids grow up feeling that way, that like they are a reflection of the moral character of their parents. And so, yeah, that's where the sense that being whipped comes from, I think, is because they have a sense of like, that through osmosis, they just absorb that from their parents and like step into that frame. Because a kid's not going to make their own frame. You're going to step into the parent's frame. And if the parent's frame is your job is to make me look good, the kid will grow up thinking my job is to make my family look good. And then suddenly their decisions aren't their own anymore.
And you see that with certainly, you know, our two countries as well, like home countries in the politics as well, the legislation. Like just Australia is such a nanny state, you call it, right? Because it's doing exactly that. It's trying to parent and coddle you.
Yeah. That's one of the things that Taleb, the guy that I've been reading recently, it's rare that I come across something where I'm just like, holy fuck, this guy gets it. But Taleb is one of those people. I've only been reading his one book, which is Anti-Fragile, so I don't know about the others, but I can assume from reading this one. Anyway, yeah, one of the main things that he identified as like a common pattern across all these different domains was interventionism. So he gives an example, he gives these examples about like how government intervention often exacerbates the issue, like how I think the example was some third world country had like this problem with snakes. It might have been somewhere in India. Cobras, and they tried to like stop the cobras, and they offered a reward for cobras. If anyone finds a cobra and brings it into the station, they get a reward. And so people started farming cobras to get these rewards. And then eventually they were like, oh, this isn't working. There's more cobras now. Let's remove the reward. So everyone didn't have any use for these cobras. They just let them into the streets, and they like fucking massively inflated the amount of cobras in the fucking population. So like that's an example of how intervention fucks up because you can't see all the variables.
And that seems like that's such a funny case because it seems so obvious to look at. But you can't say that one's obvious, but these other interventions, because it's just that they're less obvious and more complex. But the answer is almost certainly probably the same thing.
Yeah. And even in things like editing, he's obviously published a bunch of work. He's worked with editors a lot. With my book, I remember being kind of annoyed with my editors at one point, but I just thought it must be me being the stupid one because it was the first time I'd written. But this guy who's written loads of books, he says he did an experiment once where he would send like a manuscript to one editor, and both of these editors would roughly make like a similar they would average a similar number of edits per page. And so we sent the manuscript to the one editor who made like five edits to the text. And then he took that the edited manuscript and gave it to the other editor that he was working with, who also made 5 edits, but just reversed half of the things that the first guy did. And so most of the time people, like, because of the incentive structure around it, like, you can't be an editor and then just be like, no, that looks good to me. Like, you have to do something. So everyone got this sense of like, don't just stand there, do something. And Taleb's like, we need a lot more messaging of like, don't just do something, wait. Like, and so yeah, there's definitely.
You see that in trading. I mean, Taleb was a trader, right?
Yeah.
You said like that's the ultimate. Just you lose money when you need to
intervene. Yeah, because I think a lot of the time intervening is a fear response, and so it actually circumvents rationality. It doesn't. But it feels like rationality. Like, oh, there's a problem, I need to fix it. It feels rational, but it's oftentimes like an outgrowth of a fear instinct.
Wow, I really like that. Yeah, starting to get some juicy, some juice. Okay, is the next kind of topic? I'm just looking at if I've got any things that we don't want to skip over. Is the next topic in your kind of life story then Bitcoin, or is there
probably
a chapter?
Yeah.
What's your, because again, people can research, and you've done a lot of podcasts actually on Bitcoin and whatnot. What's your present day? What's the philosophy around Bitcoin that got you into it? And then I'm very keen to hear your present day because you haven't talked about it for ages.
So, to me, like, the core of the philosophy of Bitcoin is skepticism about humans. So, like, the alternative to Bitcoin, what we have, the current financial system, kind of is based on this modern monetary theory shit, which is basically the idea that you can use central banks to print a bunch of money and intervene in the economy when stuff goes wrong.
IMF.
Yeah, you can use basically, quantitative easing to intervene in the economy when stuff starts to take a downturn, and you can circumvent like the naturally occurring business cycle, as if it's like a bug to be sort of extinguished, which is something again that Taleb beautifully takes apart in that Anti-Fragile book. It's worth reading. But yeah, so I didn't like understand too much about the details of it when I was first getting into it. But as I was learning, I noticed like the theme of Bitcoin was non-interventionist, and the theme of the current financial system was interventionist. And because of that, I fell in love with Bitcoin, because I was like, yes, the problem with intervening is that the interveners don't know what the fuck they're doing, because stuff is way more complicated than you naturally assume.
And maybe if you're smart and you got a business tree, you can figure out not the Cobra thing, but you won't be able to figure it out when there's 10,000 fucking variables.
Yeah, complex systems can't be modeled. It's like the 3-body problem, right? Like, you have 2 planets orbiting each other. You can predict to infinity into the future the positions of those two bodies when they're in orbit. Add just one more, add a 3rd planet. No matter how, you could have the most powerful quantum supercomputer in the world, you cannot predict where they'll end up past like a certain part. So as a system becomes more complex, it becomes impossible to predict. And a single human is already a complex system, which means that it has feedback loops and its behaviors influence other behaviors. It's not like static and deterministic. That's just one person. Now put billions of them on a planet and make them all trade in this ever-changing environment, and then tell me you can predict that with a model and decide with like a central planning committee how to circumvent naturally occurring patterns in it that you just personally find distasteful. Like, nobody even questions why they find a business cycle distasteful. Like, it's, because it creates suffering. It's like, well, is suffering bad? It's like, well, yes. Is it always bad? Sometimes it's necessary, right? Like, there's a difference between necessary and unnecessary suffering. Like, these are all questions no economist is asking, right? They're just thinking, less stuff bad, more stuff good.
Like the editor, I've been tasked to edit.
Yeah, they've been tasked, and they've got a career out of it. The incentives are all sort of misaligned, and they get a kick out of it as well, because they do get a lot of power, and that's one of the fundamental motivators of humans, is to feel powerful. And so the problem is not that. The problem is not that they want power. It's that the systems that we design enable that desire for power seeking to have far worse consequences than it maybe needs to. One of the consequences that I latched onto early that I thought was most important was that when you inflate the currency, you punish savers who are responsible citizens that you want to reward, and you reward people who are more flighty in spending and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the main ones. The second one is the Cantillon effect, which is just that when you do make new money, the people who get it first are spending it in an economy that hasn't realized there's new money. So the value of that money hasn't decreased according to the increase.
So the insiders get not just the new money, but they get like a real buzz from it.
Well, it's actually
like insider spending.
It is the new money. It's like if you think of money as the purchasing power, like the potency of it, rather than like the unit, which is arbitrary, like the dollar is arbitrary. The purchasing power is the real good, and the purchasing power through the Cantillon effect goes to the people who get the newly printed money first, and it doesn't reach anybody down the bottom of the pyramid. So by the time the money's got to your average Joe,
it's already priced into the new market.
Exactly. So you're punishing the wrong people. And
wow, that's interesting. That's obviously why, like with COVID and like crazy masses like printing money, now there's just this massive cost of living crisis.
Yeah. And lots of people got really rich from COVID, right? Like COVID was a good thing if you're already rich because it funneled resources. Yeah. But for everybody else got fucked. So essentially what you end up with then is you're funneling purchasing power in a coercive manner from the lower prongs of society to the top of society. You're creating like an inverse gravity that cycles purchasing power upwards through society, and nobody agreed to it. And without Bitcoin, there's not an alternative. It used to be gold, but gold is like increasingly tricky as governments got.
Is it not a new phenomenon because it used to be tied to gold, so that wasn't able to happen? So it's really a new phenomenon of like reverse communism.
yeah. Like it was only since like 1971 that this has like truly been a modern monetary theory financial system that is just purely like the you can print as many dollars as you want now. There doesn't have to be a reserve of gold that pegs the value or like puts like a check and balance over the sort of
So what is stopping? And maybe the answer is nothing, and just kind of so the people aren't out with pitchforks. Like, what is stopping those people just printing off money till the cows come home for themselves, essentially?
Well, I think in some sense, like humans are really resilient, and things haven't got bad enough yet. And so, like, people are able to put up with being poor and put up with having to work longer hours and stuff like this. Especially consider like maybe it would have got to a fever pitch already if we didn't have
technology is really racing as well.
Exactly. Yeah. If we didn't have sedation, then maybe it would have already reached a fever pitch. But
do you think the technological booms have been brought upon because obviously the top end of town, the rich people are the ones making that technology, so they've been that model that funds the top end has also enabled them to really technologically advance us?
Yeah, and then those technological advancements get used as painkillers that kind of distract from how bad things get.
Okay. So in a materialistic technophilic,
one of those
technophilic, loving technology perspective, this is a good thing. But if you're not enamored by technology or you're not crazy materialistic, you're maybe a bit more kind of on the indigenous-y kind of community human side of things. This is just all downhill the last 50 years.
In some sense, like, yes, if that is your position. I'm not sure if that's my position. Like, I don't really know because I haven't thought too much about, like, I'm more interested in psychology and stuff, so I haven't thought too much about large-scale issues beyond just the Bitcoin stuff. I think I'm a technologist. Like, I can't see, like, there obviously has to be checks and balances to prevent it from being used as a painkiller and stuff like that, when the pain would actually be beneficial. But many of, like, the worst parts about being alive that I mentioned earlier, about, like, dying and your friends dying and you getting cancer and all of this stuff, like, technology has the potential to eliminate those. And so I'm an advocate of technology being advanced. I think that's a good thing, and it's also an unstoppable thing. So to attempt to try to stop it would be a form of the interventionism against which I'm quite opposed. The question is, like, not so much what's done, because technological advancement is what's going to be done. The question is how it's done, and what trade-offs are we willing to make, because there's not going to be, like, straight solutions. And yeah, it's a brave new world.
Okay, so. And Bitcoin seems to be maybe this, in the technological realm, equivalent to gold in a certain sense to keep it tethered to some grounding in some realities.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just in pure interventionist world where like the interveners just basically have free reign to do whatever, and then there's a quote
Naturally, that's going to crumble, right?
Yeah. There's a quote from, I think it was Ayn Rand. I haven't read her stuff, but this quote I really like. It says, "You can ignore reality. You just can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality," which I think perfectly sums it up. Like the act of doing fiat monetary creation is ignoring reality, because reality says there's this much value in the economy, and you say, no, there's more. I just made it. Like that's an ignoring of reality, and you can do that, but the consequences of that are bad, and you can track it like across history. I've been meaning to read this book called The Great Wave. I started it, but there's lots of other thinkers who have tracked like I think How Nations Fail was one of them. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. But there's lots of historians who have looked back at nations, and every single time the nation fails, it's accompanied with massive inflation and debasement of the currency.
Okay.
So gold was a way to prevent that. It had its own problems, like the Romans melted it in with silver to debase it, and that was how they inflated the currency, literally devaluing it physically. And what we're doing today is the exact same thing. It's just more, it's dressed up in finance bro language, so people think they're too dumb to understand it, but it's not complicated in that way. But yeah, there was this thing called Executive Order 6102, which I believe was in like World War One, where like the US government made the ownership of monetary gold illegal, and they went around everybody's houses who had been known to have gold or to buy gold, and they just took it by force. They took it all, and that's the problem with gold, is you can do that, and they
Why
did
did they do that?
because
They
there was
needed
a
it
war.
for the war.
Yeah, well, there was a war. They needed it for the war, and I think that was around the time that they did the first like temporary depegging of the dollar to gold. They were printing lots of the dollar to fund the war efforts, and yeah, they ended up outlawing it because well, they needed it. You have gold, I'll have it, please. And the government has a monopoly on
US bonds and
yeah. You have a bond. There you go. The interest rate of the bond is like lower than the fucking inflation rate. But hey, I have a bond. And then yeah, they just they will do everything that they can, I think, to maintain their position, because they do have a monopoly on violence. If they say, give me your gold, you have to do it. As if you have a Bitcoin seed phrase in your head, it's trickier.
Yeah.
I mean, they can still...
You have to get pretty 1984.
You have to get pretty fucking... Yeah, you can't just show up and, you know, wave a badge around and say, like, it would be so much trickier.
Okay, so to fully orange pill me and whoever's, you know, happens to be watching this, why? Because that sounds great. And gold, okay, because it's physical, but what gives Bitcoin the legs to actually do it? Is it now out of, you know, it's takeoff velocity now, so we can trust it a bit more? But especially back in the day, that seems like a big leap of faith.
It was in the beginning. I mean, there never had to be a big one because it snowballed. So it started as a tiny thing, and just each increment wasn't too big of a risk. It was just more people seeing the value in it, so more people buying it. Price goes up, stores more value. There was some dodgy times back in like 2016 and stuff when there was like disagreements around how it should continue developing with like the block size debates. People wanted bigger blocks, which centralizes it, but also increases the amount of transactions per second you can do on the network.
So it becomes more useful, but its fundamentally value is eroded.
Yeah, it's a trade-off again, and people weren't sure if it was worth making, but they implemented a smart solution to that with SegWit, and the blockchain isn't too big to be decentralized, and they have massively increased the amount of transactions you can include in it. Especially with Taproot, you can basically just fold a million different fucking transactions.
Getting very
into
crypto, bro.
Yeah, I know. It's crypto sucks, but Bitcoin is cool.
And I watched this little interview you did in Amsterdam, I think it was, conference or something, with a guy, and all the comments, and I briefly researched him, think he's the guy who invented crypto.
Adam Back.
Yeah, that guy. Is he the guy who invented Bitcoin? The Satoshi dude?
Who knows, man? I mean,
but you've been in this world for a while, so like...
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? I mean, I've got my theories, but...
What are they?
I don't know. I think
Did
it
you
was
get
probably
killed for them?
no. It's a bit in the Bitcoin space. It's a bit sacrilegious to try and like put a name to it, because one of the main like resilience points of Bitcoin is that there isn't a name on it.
Yeah.
So there's like because of how people work. There's like you can tarnish a person's reputation, and it trickles down into their invention. So it's a good thing. But my guess is add them back. But again, I don't know. Like I don't know well enough. Cut that out.
Nice. And did you like living in Bali? You were a little crypto fucking dude. Like, as in, is that the funding? Did you get in early or?
When?
Because there's a lot of crypto millionaires cruising around Bali.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. No, I wish.
so why not?
Well, remember I said I was really into drugs and stuff.
Right.
I got into Bitcoin before that.
Right. Okay. So you spent all the Bitcoin on.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Did you buy a lot initially and then spend it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought some really early.
I mean, classic question, but how much would you be worth if you never sold Bitcoin?
I don't know. I don't want to do the math. I don't want to do it.
Roughly in your head, like.
I genuinely don't know. More than I currently am. But yeah, it was yeah.
So, because it was a big part of your, I mean, you're saying you got into it before the drugs and stuff, and then you had a job for a year or two with making videos around it and interviewing, Satoshi and all these dudes. Like,
Yeah, that job was after I'd already sort of stopped partying.
yes. So, it being such a big part of your life, where does it sit with you now? Because now you're not doing it actively.
I don't think about it much. Like I thought about it a lot, became fully convinced, and then thought about it a lot more because I got a job in the space, and so I was writing about it a lot, making videos about it. I don't really think, I'm just letting it unfold now. I don't really check the price or anything like that.
Do you put your, like, is that where you park money if you are parking money anyway? Like, if you get paid 10 grand tomorrow, okay, that's.
You offering 10 grand?
No, but.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I use it as a savings device. So anything that I do manage to make, I'll save it in Bitcoin rather than fiat, just because it offsets inflation.
And do you encourage everyone else to?
Yeah.
Do such things? Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. I want to also understand a bit more behind the curtain of this whole YouTube journey. I've thought it was very cool that you had a very brief video of you 2 years before making it, saying, "Oh, this is welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to start this in 2 years." So it was obviously quite an intention based. And when you've initially made it was called Uncut Growth. You're doing a post a day. That's obviously changed a bit, the title and the posting regularity. Can you just describe the journey? Like, how did you, what expectations were involved in it? What parts of you were you trying to find alignment with through that? And then how has it gone?
Well, yeah, I think the clip that I recorded where I said I'm going to start in 2 years was kind of just based on a hunch. But I'm always trying to sort of, as everyone is, figure out where their life is going, what's going to happen. And I just thought that footage might be useful later on, so I just recorded it. And then, yeah, the company that I was working for went bust. So now I had free time on my hands. I started working as a scriptwriter for another YouTube channel in the Bitcoin space. And then, yeah, they stopped that show. So then I had free time on my hands again, and I was in Thailand. It was last year that happened. So I was like, I guess I've got a lot of time now. I'm just gonna start a podcast as an excuse to talk to people I find interesting and, extract information from them for free. It's a good idea, by the way. You should look into it. And yeah, so that was kind of the idea. And I was speaking to my brother about it, and he was like, fuck a podcast, just you yap about shit. It's kind of interesting, just do that at the camera. And I was I had a limiting belief for a while around that because I thought I couldn't monologue. But I realized,
spoiler alert, he definitely can.
Well, I still.
He might not have been putting the best performance now.
Well, I can in conversations I find it a lot easier because you kind of get prompted and stuff just comes out. But I find if you just put me on a stage and say talk about something interesting, nothing will come out. But I could write because I'd been writing about stuff for a while. So I was like, if I just write my videos,
I get the sense that it feels like that.
I put a lot of thought into them. And so
the video essays.
Yeah.
More, right?
Yeah. because people don't read anymore. So you have to do it into a video.
You're not getting big on Substack, mate. Like.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Although I do have a newsletter now. So yeah, I started like writing the stuff, making videos, and originally I wasn't putting thought into it. It was just like pure hobby. It was like just advice that I give to like that friend I said that was fucked in the head from Wales, like advice I'm giving him all the time. I was like, I'll just make it into video stuff and put it out there. Things I found myself repeating myself on in conversations with my friends, I just like put all of that stuff into a bunch of videos really quickly at the beginning.
And I guess if you'd been making videos as a job, you were pretty proficient at that kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah. And like the videos I made for the Bitcoin channel was like, they were more professional, so I was doing like animations and putting loads of time into them because it was a 45-hour work week job, so I had lots of time to do it. With this though, it was just like, I didn't really care about the video, it was more just the ideas, so I would just smash out the ideas and then, you know, do some kind of video to accompany it.
And what, was there any hesitance? I mean, I guess you've already cut, going way back, you've consistently cut ties with people, like the popular people at school, to feel embarrassment and stuff, but was there any friction, social friction of like putting now yourself out there, not hiding behind Bitcoin or anything else?
For sure, yeah, there was a little bit. I mean, like, luckily it started when I was in Thailand, right? Where I moved to Thailand, to Bali for like 2 months, a few days after I lost the script writing job. So I got to Bali and that was when I started doing the YouTube channel. And
I kind of had this storyline of this is why, like.
Yeah, and I'd been away from home for like 4 months, so I wasn't really thinking about my friends from back home, so I didn't really care that much. But there was still a bit of a hurdle of like, oh, they're gonna, think you're weird or something. But to be honest, I didn't care that much. I just kind of did it, and then yeah, once I uploaded the first video, I lost all fucks to give and was just like, okay, that was kind of fun. Let's just keep making these. And I think it was like the fourth one that actually took off, which just took me by surprise. And then, yeah, and then began the content treadmill after that.
Nice. And take me inside the world of the content treadmill. I don't know if I'll ever be running on it. I'm certainly don't feel like this is this is that. But because by its very nature, if you're, this public figure in that space, you almost don't want to show you could talk about it as an abstract idea, but it's not glamorous, I imagine. It's not showy. It's not what the algorithm wants to hear. So
making content.
Yeah, the actual making of it. So what is it? Take us behind the fourth wall.
I like writing. I like ideas. That's fun. I don't really like making videos, to be honest, like editing. There'll be moments where something's a bit different about the edit and it'll capture my interest, but mostly editing is just monotonous work. Talking to a camera is something that like I've got better at with time, but it's not something I look forward to at all. The only part I really enjoy is like writing about the ideas themselves. The rest is just kind of like putting it into a format that people will actually pay attention to so that it can be a career long term. So
how did you figure that out though? Because you seem to have got your finger on at least a functioning pulse. Like what? And there is I was trying to watch some of these videos, thinking about that process of editing, and I can tell there's so much the little zoom in, zoom outs on that word, and the little color changes and things. Like there's a lot which, again, even though I'm just dabbling, I can at least recognize exists. Like, yeah, how did you push yourself through to not just be like, fuck it, I just want to do Substack? Is it because you really need to get the views on it?
Yeah, I think yeah, doing like the odds of it being like a longer term like career path by just writing is so much lower, and also the people that I want to help aren't reading, so it's kind of self-defeating. Like I could write a bunch of intellectual shit for nerds who love Substack, but generally speaking, people who are like actively reading are not in that place that I was in. And what I was fundamentally like doing was, when I started the channel, was like making something to try and capture the lessons that brought me from that dark place to the better place, and try to like drag some other people out who might be in the same position. And so that had to be YouTube. because I knew like from when I was there, like the idea of reading a paragraph, let alone a fucking article, was just like absurd. Like, why the fuck would I strain myself that much?
And the amount of times you're finding yourself even in an opportunity to click such a thing.
Yeah, it just didn't happen. So it kind of excluded my target audience by virtue of being, by virtue of the medium. And also when I was in that place, I was watching lots of YouTube videos that I found quite helpful as well. So like I knew, like just from my own experience, that worked. And yeah, that's it really.
Do you? I see with YouTubers and content creators in general, but especially YouTubers who seem to have a bit of a mission behind them. It seems to be a life cycle that's definitely not forever. If anything, compared to other careers, it might be short-lived. You know, take your Jordan Peterson seems to have really hit it, and then if for whatever, like if you know through hook and crook it works and big audiences really engage, because of where you then find yourself, you're so detached from yourself in that dark place that it's increasingly hard to speak to those same people.
Yeah.
Do you see? I'm sure you've seen trajectories in other creators, and do you kind of look at that, fear that, have ways of maybe potentially avoiding that?
Yeah, so this is actually a big point of like my main sort of struggle this year was figuring out how to actually make it into a career. Because like when it started kind of working in like the online space, I kind of just like went full opportunist and just continued making videos for about 6 months, which got me to like 40k subs. And I was like happy with that. I was like, that's fast, I'll take it. But then this year was like kind of more pause and reflect, because like it got to a point where like the content treadmill, I put a lot of my pressure on myself to just like keep feeding the algorithm to make the most of the opportunity. And so I did that, and eventually I noticed like a pitfall in that approach, which I saw other like self-improvement YouTubers have definitely gone into, which is that they start making content to make content. So you're actually trying to like forcefully conjure up, like the top-down thing again versus bottom-up. It becomes top-down where you're trying to conjure stuff to say, or you're repeating yourself over and over again. And I didn't want to do either of those things. Like I only wanted to say something that I thought was genuinely important. And
What's the interventionist thing as well?
yeah, exactly. It became like a sort of interventionist.
You follow me because I'm the person who can make your life better.
Yeah. And like I never really had like a big impetus to be followed in that sense either, because I'm still figuring everything out myself as well. There's lots of stuff I haven't sorted out within myself. And when you do position yourself as like a teacher, you end up having to abide by that role, which isn't something that I like naturally have too much sort of motivation towards.
Yeah, I get the sense that you would have learned all these lessons that you could really distill into however many 5, 10, 50 videos, but then you have to start learning new lessons for the new videos, and at which point you're maybe the kind of life you're living with tens of thousands of followers is not conducive to learning all these relevant lessons.
Yeah, so like the stuff that really applies to the target audience you've learned already, and then once you've said all that stuff, it's just like either you say it again or you find a new way to say it, which is not really ideal long term. So yeah, my focus has shifted from last year, which was just like purely grow the audience so that it can be something I can continue doing because I'm enjoying it, to this year, which is more like, okay, maybe don't focus on just like growing the audience at all costs, but like, you know, there's some voices in my ear as well, like you need to sell something, you need to sell a course, and I'll be like, yeah, but I don't have like a course to teach, I'm not like qualified at something. Yeah, but it doesn't matter, mate, you got the audience, just fucking, and I was like, ugh. I wanted to be that guy because it would make my life better, right? I wanted to be able to just like build an audience, create a course that's like good enough, and maybe people find, like one person finds useful out of like 1,000, and then just like shill it as if it's the best thing in the world. Because then I would have ended up with a bunch of money and life would be cool and I'd be high status and the guy. I wanted to be able to do that, but like I just couldn't, man. It just felt
just too good of a person.
I'm just too good, man. It felt like it just felt like a constriction of optionality rather than an expansion of it. Like, and so that put me in like a bit of an existential crisis this year, because I was like, fuck, how am I going to actually make a career out of it? But like, I think where I'm landing on is like creating like wisdom tools, like actual tools, like apps and software stuff that people can use to like, as like a check-in or like a sort of compass to help them direct their way through life.
What is that word?
Compass. I'm landing on this word in a lot of different things. It's annoying because I created like a free community that I named the Compass, and now like I want to use the Compass to describe everything that I'm doing. So brand issues there.
But it is a course you're selling, isn't it? The Compass?
Yeah. So it's three things. It's like a community, a program, and a software, like a web app. And the web app backs into the program, so they work together. And then once the program is completed, you still have the exercises and the templates and the AI stuff in it as well that you can use like continually afterwards to keep like touching base.
So is this like a ChatGPT therapist person? Like, what's going on?
Not quite. It's like a journal. It's basically a journal, but with like a thin layer of AI over the top of it, and templatized exercises that like from the research that I did for the program of what stuff actually matters. Like the idea originally, right? The reason I couldn't go about creating the course was because I had a lot of experiences this year that convinced me on that embodied level that intellectual ideas and stuff actually don't hit, like the rubber doesn't hit the road as often as your mind thinks that it does. So like you can listen to thousands of hours of podcasts and self-help stuff and like nothing can change. And I kind of knew that in my head, but this year, like I met some people and
you might be the 1 in 1,000 that for whatever reason pulled yourself out via the podcast, but there's the 999 still doing the drugs and alcohol.
Well, I look back at my own life and I was like, is it the podcasts? And it wasn't. Like the stuff that really moved the needle in me was all experiences. Nothing that I learned intellectually ever made a difference. Like even the Jordan Peterson had a really positive effect on me, right? I watched a lot of his 10 push-ups in the backyard. It was the doing it. That was what shifted. And it kind of just became this rule in my head. I had enough data points, and I met some people as well who were like very in the self-improvement-y stuff, but then like kind of useless personally. And I didn't want to like just read a bunch of people who like knew all of the theory, but just were in their personal lives making no actual difference. So I realized that the thing that I produced as like a business had to be something, if it was going to help people, that actually changed action, changed behavior, and didn't just like give people more information. Because the last thing we need is more information.
And it's just like, I don't know if you've used the term, but it's almost like self-help, like masturbation.
Yeah. Yeah, it can give you the sense of progress when there's really none. And that's really dangerous. Because like I've met people who are like stuck in that. Like they're still doing drugs, they're still doing all this crazy stuff, but like it's okay because I've listened to like my Huberman podcast this morning, and I did my morning with, and it's like, sure, those things are good, but if there's massive pressing issues right in front of you, personal issues, why are you focused on general solutions?
Yeah.
Like if you have personal issues, like your responsibility as a person is to deal with your personal problems. And lots of the self-help world doesn't talk about personal problems because I can't talk about the personal problems of my audience. But what I can do is get them to talk about it. And so that's what I'm trying to do with the Compass thing, is I'm getting them to talk about it, and I'm filtering it through like the frameworks that I've come to learn.
Here's the Angelo video. Does this mean that you, Johnny, have to like get a better relationship with your mum, or is it like you have to get a job or go to the gym? Like which one is it?
Yeah, and I think lots of the time it's not even the advice that like fixes it for people. It's the act of inquiry itself, like the actual act of self-inquiry you can literally learn stuff by asking yourself, because it's not like lots of information is like subdermal. It's like an undercurrent, and it doesn't come to the surface until it's like something has happened to pull it out. You see this in relationships all the time, and like people can think they're completely like fine, they've got all this shit together. They get into a personal romantic relationship and all goes to shit, right? Because stuff that they didn't know was there comes up. And so the act of like directly engaging with direct experiences, and one of those experiences is introspection, like genuinely looking at, genuinely wanting to know the answer to like, why do I continually engage in this behavior?
It's allowing yourself to like, okay, Angelo's Apple program or something is going to be a mirror or maybe an AI-powered camera to check out my blind spots for me.
In a sense, yeah, that's one of the features is blind spots. So like when people write about these exercises, which are already like, it's all science-based, right? So all of the exercises in it have actual backing to be like good and useful tools that actually have like a scientifically measurable effect on outcomes in terms of behavioral change. So all of those exercises, they should be benefits already just from doing them. But then the thin layer of AI on top is like, because they're writing exercises, they're introspection exercises, you now have a bunch of natural language you can send to OpenAI who can deliver like pretty solid fucking advice and like blind spots. I've used it myself a couple times already, and I was afraid that I was like making a gimmick or something because like people talk to ChatGPT a lot.
Yeah,
about
and then it
things.
gives them like, it's like the ultimate echo chamber, but for real deep shit.
And the problem is because when you're talking to ChatGPT, you can keep talking to it, so you can like steer it, and so people can like steer it to just like confirm whatever they like. If ChatGPT starts disagreeing with you, you can kind of just be like, actually, no, you're wrong, I'm right. And it'll go, oh yeah, you're so fucking wise and intelligent. I didn't realize I was so stupid. And then people get into traps with that. But if you just like have a single prompt that takes like something that was written, not with a view to how is AI going to perceive this, but it was just a part of the exercise. And then you send that and say like, you just get one response back of like blind spots, patterns, and a suggestion. Then I think that can be a lot more useful, because you'll already be writing about stuff that you maybe wouldn't have originally brought to a ChatGPT type therapy session in the beginning, because people generally use that to just affirm what they're already believing. They'll like have a disagreement with somebody and they'll be like, he said this thing and that's fucked up, isn't it? Like leading questions, and then ChatGPT will be like, yeah man, that's so fucked up. You're just basically Gandhi. And it goes wrong. But like, if you oppose, like I said about technological advancement, if you oppose the checks and balances, like you can actually make it better. And lots of people, when they try to solve problems, they have this like purely additive mindset. Like if I have a problem, I'm going to solve it by adding shit. And most of the time you need to solve stuff by taking it away. So we've been gifted this like great technology with natural language AIs, and the problems that are coming along with it, like AI psychosis and stuff, I think is largely because there isn't like,
what's that?
AI psychosis. It's like this thing where people are doing what I just said. They're steering AI in different directions.
So they're getting themselves into this absolute. Yeah.
And they're just basically like getting affirmed all the time with all their beliefs, and like that's something that reality will never do. That's how you
unless
stay
you're like
sane.
Famous or super hot.
Right.
Yeah, and then that's why they're always crazy.
It's probably what happened to Kanye. Like when you get to a certain level, you're not actually supposed to be affirmed. Like this is one of the things I actually learned from Jordan Peterson, because he did lots of work as a clinical psychologist, right? And he said like, your job as a psychologist is not to affirm what somebody already believes about them. And I had first-hand experience with this, because when I was all fucked up, I had two therapists. One of them I had a bunch of sessions with. She had degrees on her wall. She had like done all of the psychology degrees. She was like licensed and everything. Bunch of lessons with her. Everything that I explained to her got sort of interpreted through her like her framework that she had learned from school, which was quite interventionist. It was imbued with like this myth of fragility that like all negative experiences equal to harm. Like that's quite a common thing in academia and just in the culture at the moment in general. And so if ever there was something that would be a negative experience, like for instance, being challenged by my family members about one of my things of behavior, her kind of response was more that like, you do have a real issue. And she would just affirm my belief that like, yeah, you do have anxiety, you do have depression, these are real things, and your family does need to make sacrifices in order to make sure that this is easier for you. And this type of messaging, which I think is really common amongst like people who come out with a
That's
degree.
Like fucking half the world has some disorder of some
right,
kind.
Yeah. And so, because it feels good, right? It's like I'm a special snowflake and other people need to fucking get out of the way because, I'm delicate.
I have reasons for not being as good as I otherwise should or might be.
Yeah, it's the ankle weights thing. Like, I'm wearing ankle weights you just can't see. Like, that's why I'm not winning the race. You can't see them because they're in my head. And people buy into that a lot. And the therapist I had that affirmed me made me worse. And then I went to another therapist who did not have the degrees and stuff, but was just a practitioner. He wasn't a theorist, he was a practitioner. And I arrived at his door. I was like 13, and I just like got done with this previous therapist who had convinced me I was a delicate flower and all of this. And he opened the door and like the first
Pussy.
you pussy. Close. I mean, like I remember like asking, so what are we gonna do? And he said, well, we're gonna get a big hose, we're gonna stick it in one ear and blast it on full pelt, and all the shit will come flying out the other ear. And I just looked at him like, I looked at my dad like, this is the guy? Like, this is the guy? You serious? And then like he obviously came back down to the ground and we had a conversation and stuff, but he did not let me catastrophize. He did not let me like bullshit myself in front of him. He saw through all of it, and I hated him for it. I really did not like him. I did like one more session with him after that, and was so like angry that I was just like, I'm never seeing that guy again. But everything that you said stuck in my head, and over the course of the next like couple months, it started just like it's like he planted seeds, and they just like grew. These like seeds of doubt. You're like, oh, this fucking guy. And then like after a few months, I was like really on like the up and up. Like my mental health was getting so much better because I was dropping these like stories that I was like committing myself to. And
But this was before the drugs and alcohol.
yeah, this was before. Shit got worse again later, but there was a moment of peace. And yeah, I ended up saying like giving him a big thank you and everything, because I think he was one of the most influential people probably in my life.
Was he around when you were back in the drugs and alcohol? Or?
No, I didn't. Because I didn't see myself as a problem at that period of time.
That's right. You were the crusader.
Yeah, everyone else didn't get it. I got it. Everyone else didn't get it. Like they just couldn't see.
You don't just have ankle weights. You had a fucking rock in the back.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, I love it. You seem very, even with the words, I don't know if you spent a lot of teenage life in a psychologist's office or reading and stuff about it, but you're definitely in that. One thing I think I remember you maybe saying a sentence in somewhere, but the whole kind of esoteric-y, mythical, spiritually stuff, which is, I don't believe why you're here in Bali, but it's definitely strong presence here in Bali and in all sorts of places. What's your relationship with that side of reality, that dimension, that the animism,
I find it really interesting. So I find it interesting as like a way to learn a lot about humans. You can learn a lot about people because a lot like the stuff that they end up thinking about is reflective of them in some degree, or reflective of the things that they want, and their motivators and their drives. I've never like gone into it. I think in Bali in particular, this is a big problem I had with it when I came for the first time when I was 16. Was
you're looking at all these like people putting their little flowers, incense, you're like, dumb idiots.
Yeah. Especially then, because I was so cynical and stuff. Like I'm less enraged by it now than I was back then. But it really
Enraged.
Oh yeah, it pissed me off. I think I was like projecting.
The big monkey gods in the middle of the street. You're like,
yeah. Or not that, just the sort of like the Western sort of like New Age spirituality stuff that was going on in Ubud. Like you'd go to a cafe and there'd be like someone crying about their childhood trauma and stuff like that, and they'd be sitting with like a guru type figure who's got it all figured out and is like helping them, and I saw it as fake, and it pissed me off because I think I was kind of like projecting lots of parts of myself that I hadn't fully acknowledged yet onto them. But still, I'm not a fan. I think like not of the practices themselves, especially not the practices. I think they're great. And not the theory so much. I don't have an issue with a theory. I got an issue with a certain type of person that I think can oftentimes can gravitate towards that. Where, again, often it's the same as the case of the kids from sort of that. But I think it's a case of like the kids when I was in drugs and stuff in that circle, like they're often just carrying more than I am. But I see lots of people that I've known have used that as two things, like as...
And with that, can you just clarify what you're thinking about when you say that?
The more New Age spirituality, basically. And I've used it as like a branding thing, like to 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 come across like enlightened and stuff like this, that is like a status seeking thing, which I have no problem with status seeking. I just have a problem with dishonesty, and I think oftentimes it's dressed up in dishonesty, which I don't. That's one of like the few. All of my moral values have been called into question this year because I was reading a lot of Nietzsche, who just fucking smashes it all down. But like the one thing that's remained is the honesty thing. I I've always had a big aversion to that. Probably just because it's really inconvenient for me, because I'm a little bit autistic, so I struggle to see sometimes when people are being dishonest. So when I do see it, I'm like, ah, fucking bastard.
You must be really dishonest if I'm.
Yeah, if I can fucking see it. I mean, no, I'm probably average at detecting dishonesty, but yeah, hint of the tism.
And what about do you have any, and you don't have to like hold them as beliefs even, but do you have any metaphysical, like, oh, there's a bit of magic in the air, like stuff like that, to describe, how do you describe that experience that your dad had and then you had? Like, what terms do you place those in? Because obviously a Christian will place them in certain terms, and an animist, which I've been listening to, I don't know if kind of everything's imbued with a life force, essentially, a spirit. We'll see it in different terms versus the kind of New Age spiritual versus the modern materialist, capitalist, whatever. It's just like, it's a rock, it's a fucking tree, it's a squirrel.
Yeah, I think that I'm more aligned with like the animist perspective, because I think that the physical world that you see around you is pure measurement. Like everything, like when you see yellow, like that's a measurement that your eye is doing about radiation. Like, but the measurement is not the thing that is measured. Like if I say that the thing is 2 foot long, that doesn't tell you anything about.
So going back to the words.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you anything about inside the thing. Like it doesn't tell you what the thing is or its essence, just how it relates to a 2 foot long ruler. That's all it tells you, is the relationship. So we build everything, like all our sensory experiences are measurements. And so, like there's this branch of philosophy called epistemology, which basically studies where knowledge comes from and the limits of it. And all of our knowledge is derived from sensory experiences. That's the initial input. And if those sensory experiences are just measurements, then the entire reality that you have when you think about reality in your head, when you picture it, when you use words to describe it, and even when you're walking around in day-to-day life, is constructed from like relational measurements, not discrete objects. But it was selected for evolutionarily to see discrete objects. Like there is a sofa, there is a person, and they're separate, and they're mechanical. This is especially since science became popular. There's like this mechanistic view that is just billiard balls knocking against each other, and everything is just like kind of mechanically determined, which I completely disagree with. One, because it just doesn't
Instead they flow with each other, or what's the...
Well, it's probably like the reality is relational and probabilistic. It's not like discrete and defined. It's only like observation that collapses it into a discrete, defined thing. And this isn't just like...
That's double slit experiment.
That's double slit experiment. And it like this is stuff people were talking about with non-duality since like some of the earliest writing in history. Because you are reality. So introspection and experience can teach you things about it if you pay attention. And experiences that people had years ago with non-duality and stuff come back up now through different modes of observation, like with double slit experiment and stuff. But that doesn't change the fact that like the reality that you experience day to day is a reality of discrete objects, which is it's a useful lie. It's not the truth. There's this guy called Donald Hoffman, I think, The Case Against Reality. Where
I think you were talking about this in a video I was watching last night as well, about like the lower resolutions of reality.
Yeah, he uses another kind of screen metaphor, which is good, which is like, when you have a file on a computer and you see the icon on your desktop, and like he says the reality that we experience is like an interface. But that icon that you see on your screen, it can be in the middle of the screen. That doesn't mean that the file is in the middle of the computer. In fact, that icon tells you nothing about the file. The nature of the file is so different from the nature of the icon that they're not even really related.
It's just the agreed upon template for representing what files could be.
Yeah.
That icon.
Yeah. So like your everyday experience of reality is like that interface, and it's an interface because evolution didn't care about the truth as much as it cared about utility, what's useful. Because if you had the truth but it wasn't any use and you couldn't use it to actually engage and survive, then you died off. And
humans don't only see infrared and UV because
it's not useful.
Yeah.
So all our ancestors survived, which means they had mutations that caused their experience of reality to be useful, and we are the descendants of them. So our experience is a useful one, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a true one. And it is the case that there are necessary falsifications built into it. One of which is the separation between self and other. Like if there's no discrete objects, there's no discrete self either.
Yeah. And that's that flash of you were describing before that you and your father have experienced.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to bring it back to stupid shit because, I haven't been reading Nietzsche in one. I feel like I did well in the school system because of memorization, but the actual learning stuff. Now, this whole, like, when I see your videos, but especially when I look at you in real life, you're a lot more calm energy than I actually expected. Some of your videos are a bit almost biting, because they're written, right? So they're designed to, attack the intellect and pull that person out of that dark hole with some light and fucking force.
Yeah.
So as a kind of just a bloke roaming around, and again, I think we kind of explored how you connect with others, but again, a few times, the little fucking Easter eggs of, pretty girls and intimidation and stuff. What's that side of your life, if you're willing to indulge it, and how does that go? Because I personally, love these kind of chats and long things, and some girls are up for it, some girls just, on average just aren't, and I'm as confused as any young bloke about that side of things. So what's been your experience as a little tism boy rolling around Bali?
That sums it up, to be honest. Yeah, a little tism boy. It's hard to say because I don't really know what the average experience. I think somewhat along the average. Like in terms of relationships, it's definitely posed some challenges, especially when I was like younger, because I thought like there was a period of time where I felt like I sort of had to find somebody who was interested in the same stuff as me, which is like a very tough selection process.
I wouldn't recommend that for you.
No, you're basically at zero when you pass the filter. But through like actually one of the benefits of like having the teen years that I did have was I kind of let go of a lot of that sense of like feeling like I needed to be met on like the sort of intellectual interest space in order to have a relationship with somebody, because all of my friends were so polar opposite to me, and I developed genuinely good friendships with them and came to like them for the people that they were rather than just like the conversations they could give me. So I've never I don't feel a sense that like I have to find somebody who's like as tism as me. There's kind of a different sort of yardstick that I'm measuring for that, which is, I guess, fundamentally honesty. And I don't know, I feel like, especially in relationship, like people are so complex that to try and like capture somebody in words is impossible. So when I picture like the type of sort of person that would work for me, it's not like
what are you seeing if and however you've had past, whether it be dalliance or full-blown thing, like what flags, to use common terminology, have been popping up as like, oh yeah, go towards that, go against that might be different to like basic shit?
I think, as with most things in relationships, it's usually just like an intuition thing. But yeah, I try to steer away from the new agey types that sort of are capable of like believing something by decree, like deciding to believe something.
Mm.
I had a relationship with somebody who had that flag, and I ignored it and ended up being a problem.
Okay. Do you mind me asking, like, what is that a telltale sign of, like, other
Right.
things?
Yeah. So I think like all humans we have like this ability to suspend disbelief temporarily, and we do it when we watch movies. We do it when we engage with stories in general. We on purpose suspend disbelief for the sake of something else, for the sake of enjoying the film, for getting the moral of the story, for paying attention to it. And there are like stories floating around in the air that we can plug ourselves into at any moment. Not necessarily archetypal stories, but just like cliches.
Like, fiat money's good.
Yeah. And like mainly in terms of like how we relate to other people, there's lots of cliches because we grew up watching films, and like to try and come up with an example of one, like a good example of a cliche story is like the guy who just tries to help, and by trying to help ends up making everything worse, and now everyone hates him, and poor him. That's like a cliche story that you see in movies a lot. Like, he was just trying to help and he fucked it all. It got worse because of him. He's useless.
Interventionist.
He's hopeless. Yeah. And so we can plug ourselves into these stories and sort of extract the emotions that come along with them by like seeing ourselves in these ways. The ankle weights one is another one. The special snowflake one is a very common one. And the payoff when you suspend your disbelief in relationship to those stories is that you get the good emotions from them and stuff, and you can make yourself feel quite righteous and all sorts of things. You can become very convinced that you're in the right on something, which is a big problem in interpersonal relationships because they kind of depend on the humility of both parties. And yeah, I think if people show any signs of sort of selective believing, where they're not just temporarily suspending their belief for the sake of a conversation with something, like they're committed to not exploring something that they know to be the case because of the implications of it are like would mean that they had to do something they didn't want to do or admit something about themselves that they didn't want to admit. So I guess self-awareness is kind of the main thing, the sort of end of that, which is also a tricky selection process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a tough one. I don't really, I just fucking, what I see myself, actually, this podcast project has been interesting because I have been seeing it as someone who's so prone to, or has been prone to, and probably got a bit of a stigma against myself of like, talking and being kind of loud and whatnot, to just really like, can I make myself good at the art of listening? So like, if it's been a 90-10 ratio, that's like a win in my books for myself. But what's happened because of that, I think, is just a shocking amount of humility, not in who I am, like I'm, if anything, the opposite, but like humility in belief in what I've always held to be true or right, and that has been really shocking because when people, probably 2 hours in or something, are really delving into, and you're pretty prone because it's what you do every day, but all sorts of people proning into how they see the world and what they value and whatnot, it really makes you question, and the intimate relationship is the ultimate version of that because you kind of have to, by relating to someone on that level, have to take into consideration how they view and value certain parts of the world.
And often I feel like one person, in most relationships, I think both parties can actually, a lot of the time, see something about the other person that other person can't see, and it will work both ways. So like in a relationship, often like person A will know something about person B that they're just not saying because person B isn't ready to hear it. And person B will know something about person A that they're just not saying out loud because the other one's not ready to hear it. So like, we like to think that we know ourselves fully, but there's often lots of things that are very obvious to other people about us that are we're completely blind to.
Do you think we're blind, or do you think we're like selectively blind? Like, because as soon as we might hear it, we might be like, the initial reaction in that room might be like, but like straight away, like that therapist that told you you're a pussy straight away, you might know it to be true. It's just so, that I've been purposely blind.
It's that. Yeah.
Even every time my subconscious looked at it, it looked away. So my conscious never got there.
I think it's both, actually. Like, that's the main one for sure. Like your thought and your attention is not divorced from your will. So like the things that you will, like what you actually want, that will direct where you think. So if you don't want to know something about yourself, you never will. But like also sometimes it's just like it's just blatant confusion. Like we've never come into contact with that side of ourselves. We've never had anyone present the evidence to us.
That's true.
So
that's what I think, having wide groups of people and new novel voices can often help.
Yeah, I think that's more rare. Like the more common one is someone just doesn't want to see something about themselves. But I try not to get into the habit of assuming that's always the case, because that tends to be a more biting perspective. Because it's like, not only are you not aware of this thing about yourself, but it's like kind of your fault that you're not aware of it as well, which is like double. Whereas if you approach things of like, hey, you might genuinely just not be aware that you chew your food so fucking loudly, then there might be like less of a moral dimension to the criticism.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I've got all this list of quotes and stuff, but now I'm looking at, I feel like we've covered in their own roundabout ways most of them. And there's one though that I'd love you to just harp on about however you see fit, because it's something I don't know if we've fully elucidated. It's from Jung though, but this is from your Twitter, I think. And it's, the world hangs on a thread, and that thread is the psyche of man.
That's one of the reasons that Jung is one of my favorite people ever. Because people say like the existential threats to humanity are things like nuclear war, and often the worst things that have happened to humanity have been done by humanity, and we're afraid of those things happening again and stuff. And the point of blame that people often look at is like the nukes, the big red button. But it's humans that press the big red button, and getting a good understanding of what humans are and how they work, I think, is the only viable long-term protection mechanism to protect us from ourselves, because we are going to forever increase our instrumentalities, our technologies. We are forever getting better at the means, and unless we have a solid understanding of the ends, then the means might be a bad thing to develop. Because if the end is the destruction of humanity, then nukes aren't a good means, because they further the ends. So bad ends makes all the means useless as well. And it's definitely a long road to, like, on a mass scale, increase the extent to which people are aware of the various forces that move them and cause them to think certain things, feel certain things, and do certain things. But it's only from an understanding of that we have any shot of progress. In fact, I'd probably call that progress. Everything else is sort of instruments. And you can do that on a personal level in your own life by self-inquiry, by understanding yourself better, by engaging in a sort of radical honesty where you subjugate your identity and your ego to the discovery of truth, so that at any time you're willing to sacrifice a part of your identity if it means getting more of the truth. That's what saved me from my dark part, and I think that's what saves people from the big red button. Because, yeah, the danger is man's psyche, it's not the instruments themselves.
Nice. Oh yeah. I like it. Happy to. Is there anything else? Is there any like question that you'd be afraid to answer? Is there anything else? Yeah.
Oh. I don't think so. I mean, there probably is. I just can't think of them on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I reckon all good.
Sweet. That was a sick interview. I
Thanks,
enjoyed
man.
that a lot, man.
Yeah, no, cheers. Absolutely. I'm going to very much look forward to watching it back.
For sure.